to Grip the Laces podcast, the number one football podcast in the world, where we talk all things football and more. My name is Bruce, alongside with my co-host, JR.
What's up, everybody?
Today, we'll be talking about Antonio Brown getting traded to the Oakland Raiders, Eric Weddle to the Rams, Michael Bennet traded to the Patriots, Carlos Hyde to the Chiefs, Case Keenum to the Redskins, Justin Houston being released by the Kansas City Chiefs, and Trent Brown on the market, projected to earn $14.4 million on his next contract. And first up, we have Antonio Brown. So recently there was a lot of drama with the whole Antonio Brown kind of mess going on in Pittsburgh. He was recently featured on LeBron's The Shop on HBO, talking all kinds of trash about his former or current coach until he gets traded, Tomlin, and his future Hall of Famer quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. And it quickly went from 12 teams down to 2 teams because no one wanted to deal with all his diva drama that was going on. He was left with 2 teams. That was the Oakland Raiders and Tennessee Titans. And to make a long story short, the Raiders quickly made a move out of the 2 teams. They offered the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers will receive a 3rd round and a 5th round draft pick in this year's NFL draft. But real quick, to add on to that, I don't know, I'm sure many people got the notification, but last Thursday, Thursday the 7th, it was late. I remember this being super late. I got a notification late that he had actually been close to, if not, he was a Buffalo Bills. And then I remember in the middle of the night and towards the early morning, the deal actually, it did not happen. So for whatever reason, that deal fell apart. And then, the Steelers worked all weekend to get a deal done. And then I think it was around 9 o'clock Pacific time that a deal struck through that he was 9 o'clock Saturday the 9th that he was an Oakland Raider. And then people woke up early this morning, the 10th, and found out about the deal.
And rumor has it, until all the details come out, we don't know for sure, but rumor has it that the Raiders are giving him $30.1 million guaranteed over a 3-year span with an additional $24 million in incentives. Now, this is a big deal because, for one, this is an increase to what he was earning in Pittsburgh. And 2, if we go back a year ago, Khalil Mack wanted a big deal. They refused to give it to him because they're going into rebuild mode, but yet they go out on the limb and give this huge deal to Antonio Brown. Little weird for the situation they're dealing with, but, they do have to fill those seats, and they are in the middle of trying to move to Las Vegas, so it kind of makes sense for a business standpoint, just not for a team standpoint.
Yeah, it's an interesting move. It's always hard to tell right away what's going to happen with a trade or a free agent signee. Going on to that real quick, I just want to add this. I did a little bit of research before for this, and I looked into the top 5, and then I'll even say the top 6. Receivers all time in terms of yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got Hines Ward, who's number 1. He was actually a 3rd round draft pick. Antonio Brown, he's number 2, who was a 6th round draft pick. John Stallworth, he was a 4th round. Heath Miller, he was actually a tight end, and he is their 4th receiving in yards. There's a gentleman by the name of Lewis Lips. He was actually a 1st round draft pick back in 1984. And then you have Lynn Swann, who was their 6th receiving yards, and he was their 21st pick for the Steelers back in 1974. So it's interesting to say who won this deal. Because on paper you don't know what you're getting, but for the Steelers, they only got a 3rd round and they got a 5th round pick, but when you have Juju Smith, who's now going to be your number 1 wide receiver, you find a way to complement him, and I don't think the Steelers are going to be worried at all.
Exactly. Pittsburgh's in a position where they can easily move on. I mean, it's very rare that a team can move on from the best running back as well as the best wide receiver, arguably, in the league. They can easily move on from that with they can fill that void with the pieces that they have now. Obviously, they do have to pick up another wide receiver because Juju Smith-Schuster is obviously going to get double teamed, but those are just little issues to deal with. But it allows them to easily move on. So you brought up those yards, and it's really good statistical, really brings up a really good point. I listen to Colin Cowherd from Fox Sports every single day on the way to work, and he brought up a really good point that I never really paid attention to. And he's been talking about this whole Antonio Brown thing for the last, I want to say, 2 weeks since all the drama unfolded, and he broke down, him and his team broke down this statistic that made so much more sense after he kind of laid it out. And what it was is, over the last 10 Super Bowls, only one team, and I'll name that team later, only one team had a big name star wide receiver. So basically the point he was trying to make is that nowadays teams can win with B and B plus wide receivers. You know, the Rams with Brandon Cooks, the Patriots with Julian Edelman and Gronk and all these guys. You know, these big names like Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown, Tyreek Hill. You know, Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs did make it pretty far, but besides that, all these other teams didn't have big star wide receivers. And, you know, to Colin's point that he was making is that over the last 10 years, only one team won the Super Bowl with an all-star wide receiver, and that was the Denver Broncos, and that was with Demaryius Thomas, who is maybe not an A+, but a little less, like maybe an A-, but he's in the A's. Yeah. And it was such a good point. I had to kind of stop and think about it. Yeah. And it made so much sense.
To add on to that point, and I thinking about it, I'm like going through my head, and you know, that was Peyton Manning's last year that they won the ring against a really good Carolina Panthers defense. It's funny you mentioned that because I think about the Steelers. I think about the Seattle Seahawks most recent Super Bowl win, and you know, they went against Peyton Manning in that, and Peyton Manning had at that time, you know, he had Demaryius Thomas, he had Eric Decker, and he had Wes Welker, but that defense was so good that the Seattle defense was so good that they stopped Denver. And think about the Seattle Seahawks, like, wide receivers who won the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, probably their number one is Doug Baldwin, and I can't even put a fact to that one.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like I said, I would have never thought about it until he kind of laid out all the facts, and you can't. I mean, there's nothing to argue. It's on paper, and that's kind of the truth. And that his whole argument was, going forward, you know, let's not focus on signing these big guys. And that's kind of why it was down, besides the drama, why it was down to two, you know, Oakland and Tennessee. Teams that it's like, okay, they don't even have a chance at winning the Super Bowl. All right, moving on. Number 2, Eric Weddle to the Rams. So Eric Weddle, all-star safety, originally with the San Diego Chargers. I almost said Padres. Originally with the San Diego Chargers. Last few years, he's been with the Baltimore Ravens. Just a couple days ago, the Ravens did drop him, and the Los Angeles Rams quickly scooped him up to a 2-year deal worth $12.5 million with $5.2 million guaranteed. And basically what they're doing is they're replacing Lamarcus Joyner. And, you know, for those who have followed the Rams, they're doing what hasn't worked for a lot of teams, and that's just going out there and signing all these veteran players. You know, somehow it's worked for them. They don't have much depth because they spend so much money on these starting veterans, but it worked for them. They were in the Super Bowl, and I mean, hats off, because I'm a huge Eric Weddle fan.
Yeah,
I lived in San Diego. I followed Eric Weddle when he was on the Chargers. I mean, just future Hall of Famer, all-star.
Yeah. So here's what I'm gonna. I looked up a article on this is the Rams Wire USA Today, and after Eric Weddle had been cut by the Baltimore Royals, I don't even know, by the Baltimore Ravens, he actually received 11 offers right away after he was cut by Baltimore, which showed that there were teams that were still very interested in this safety. So, you know, and right away I'm going to say I love this move, the Rams. But by signing him, he said he narrowed those 11 offers down to 5 teams, and then late Thursday night he got a deal done. Like you just said, it was a 2-year deal worth up to $2.5 million, and he said, quote, this is after he signed with them, he said, quote, "You look at where you want to go. What are the teams that need a safety?" And the Rams are right at the top of the list. The system where I think I fit, my personality, how close they are. I mean, this team is on the verge of greatness. They showed it last year, the last couple years. So each year they've progressed further and farther, and obviously they were at the top of the list. Here's something interesting too. I did some more research on Eric Weddle. In the last 16 he's played 16 seasons, and he's only missed 7 games.
That's incredible.
Which is, it's a big deal. And along those 16 seasons, he's had 29 interceptions, and he's got a career 8 forced fumbles. So he's, you know, it's that veteran role. It's gonna fit. You know, you look at that D line with Aaron Donald, and you know, you add a safety back there. You know, this team, they looked great defensively last year, and you know, on paper, ideally, it looks like they'll be well, but we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. I mean, I know they're on schedules to lose a lot of big names this year, but if they continue to replace them with the names they're signing. And moving on, defensive end Michael Bennet trades to the Patriots. So the Eagles recently traded defensive end Michael Bennet to the Patriots for a 4th and 5th round pick. And this is huge considering the Patriots are not looking to re-sound the 1-year deal they did with Trey Flowers.
Yeah, interesting move. You know, again, it's going to be hard to see. It's going to be hard to judge on you know, how this deal ends out for them, but did some research again. Patriots last year, they allowed 1,800 yards rushing, which is actually, according to Football Reference, they were the 11th best rushing defense in the league. You know, it's not the best, it's not the greatest. You're right there in the middle.
Which is huge considering they didn't really have much of a defense. They added Trey Flowers to a 1-year deal, and it dramatically changed that defensive front.
Yeah, and so they allowed 1,800 rushing yards. They only allowed 7 rushing touchdowns. So that's not too bad, which is the second best in the league. The Bears were the first best. Bears only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns on defense.
And next we have Carlos Hyde to the Chiefs. So Carlos Hyde was recently released by the Jacksonville Jaguars and signed to a 1-year deal for $2.8 million to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is huge for Kansas City because of all the Kareem Hunt drama. We don't know what's going to happen there. They really haven't talked about it much, you know, whether he's coming back. Obviously, he's most likely going to return, but there's all kinds of issues going on there. They did kind of sign Carlos Hyde, who's a veteran, really good veteran, someone they can count on.
Yeah, it's adding on to that. He's a young guy. He came out of Ohio State. I followed him for a little bit. He went to he started his career up in San Francisco, and I was actually really surprised because once he became a free agent, he actually did not resign. He moved on to Cleveland. It didn't work out well there. He was traded midseason, went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then it didn't work out there. Became a free agent this year, and then Kansas City moved on, or Kansas City swooped him up for that 1-year deal. It's hard to make predictions, but not a bad signing for Kansas City because Carlos Hyde will be able to share. He'll be able to share the load when it comes to those running backs in Kansas City, which is good because all the pressure and all the workhorse, it won't have to be just put on Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde has had a deal with several injuries in the past that included his back, his foot, some type of concussion, and his MCL. And then looking offensively at the Chiefs, they use shotgun a lot. Last year, the Chiefs, they did 80% shotgun. I mentioned Carlos Hyde early in his career. Back in 2016, he played 213 plays out of shotgun. Next year, he only used 52 plays, or he was only involved in 52 plays out of shotgun. So, again, could be on paper looks like a great signing. We won't know until later in the year and looking into next offseason.
Absolutely, and I would assume that they're not signing him, expecting him to be the workhorse. Just kind of like a backup, third string running backs, kind of fill the void that's going on over there. But I think it'll work out well. Next up, we have Case Keenum to the Redskins. This is one of the most interesting topics of today. So the Broncos traded Case Keenum to the Washington Redskins along with a 7th round pick for a 6th rounder from Denver Broncos. Now, this is interesting. We all knew something was going to happen because they did go after Joe Flacco. Kind of shook the NFL with that move. And I was a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of Case Keenum. I don't know what Denver was doing, signed him to that massive contract. I didn't see anything in him. It didn't really work out. They have such a good team, good defense, good all-around offense. Case Keenum just didn't seem to fit there, and Joe Flacco get with his experience, and I just feel like he's going to be a good fit. Kind of like I hate to say this, but like a bootleg Peyton Manning. And he's going to kind of go in there and fill the void, and I think they can do pretty well. They can probably, at least at a minimum, compete in that tough division they're in, with the Chiefs and who else is in there?
The Chargers.
Chiefs and Chargers, and at least they can put up a competition with Joe Flacco versus Case Keenum.
Yeah, very interesting. Interesting deal. It's an interesting deal for Washington because we don't know with Alex Smith. Alex Smith is dealing with some type of staph injury. We don't know the after breaking his leg. So, the condition of him going into next year looks like Case Keenum will be the starter unless, something happens in training camp or, whatever reason. I don't want to say it's a bad move. It's not it's an interesting move. You trade late round draft picks like you just mentioned, but doing some research. Case Keenum career 64 career passing touchdowns, 42 interceptions. His rating is 84.5. So it's not the greatest, it's not the best, it's right there, it's in the middle of the pack. And then last year while he was with the Broncos, it was his highest passing yards at 3,840.
All right, moving on. Outside linebacker Justin Houston recently released by the Kansas City Chiefs. This is an interesting move. I would assume with a move this big that they do have intentions on replacing this spot, but it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward.
Yeah, my initial reaction was that I was shocked and I was surprised. Why? Because Justin Houston is such a big name on defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, again, doing some more research, the Kansas City Chiefs were the 6th worst rushing defense allowed last year. They allowed 2,114 yards rushing, which is, again, it was the 6th worst in defense. And then, you think about all their primetime games, the Kansas City Chiefs, and every game was a shootout. Everybody remembers the Monday night game against the St. Louis Rams, where it was just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, and just scoring drive after scoring drive, big play after big play. And then there was even a Sunday night game late in the season that mattered most when they went to Seattle to play the Seattle Seahawks. And again, it was another high-scoring game. So maybe it is time to move on from Justin Houston. You know, it's going to be interesting, you know, and only time will tell.
All right, and last up we have interesting little financial little tidbit regarding left tackle Trent Brown. So for many years, about 5-6 years, the Patriots star quarterback Tom Brady was protected by left tackle Nate Solder. For many, many years, he protected him. It allowed Tom Brady plenty of time in the pocket. Well, they eventually let him go, signed a massive contract elsewhere, and Patriots were struggling to fill that void, and they eventually signed left tackle Trent Brown, and he just came in and absolutely saved the day. Not only saved the day, but it allowed Tom Brady all kinds. I mean, the statistics are insane. The amount of sacks that they allowed with Tom Brady this year, the hurried up offense, all kinds of stuff. Patriots paid him $1.8 million this year. It was a 1-year deal. Unfortunately, they most likely are looking to re-sign him because he's looking for a massive contract. And according to Sport Trac, he's projected to earn $14.4 million per year with his next contract, something that Patriots cannot afford and will not be willing to pay for.
Yeah. Adding on to that, the guy's young. He's only 25 years old. He's been in the league for 4 years. You know, just looking at some interesting tidbits again about his statistics in the 4 years that he's played. He's only allowed, I want to say only, but he's had a total of 13 false starts in his career. He's got six holding calls against him. He's allowed nine sacks for 69.5 yards in those 4 years that he played. Again, he's a young guy. Does he deserve the money? You can argue and you can make a case for why you would throw X amount of dollars towards his direction to protect your quarterback.
It's hard because you talk about $14.4 million, and who in the NFL or in pro football earns that kind of money? It's usually star wide receivers, kind of lower end quarterbacks, and star running backs. I mean, really high end running backs. But, you know, with the quarterback position, it's always been important, but it continuously gets more and more important. And, you know, who's that main guy, especially with a right-handed quarterback, that main guy to protect the quarterback and give him time in the pocket that he needs, at least 3 to 4 seconds, is that left tackle. And I think they deserve a lot more money than they've gotten in the last few years. And that's going to wrap it up for all the football news. Do you have anything non-football related to talk about?
The only thing that's really, unless anybody's got anything big out there to share, a big non-football news, other than first opening day baseball opening in 3 weeks, is we got the A-Rod, who proposed to singer, songwriter, and actress Jennifer Lopez over the weekend.
All right.
Yeah. Let's see. A-Rod, 43 years young. Jennifer Lopez. He's actually, I didn't know this. Jennifer Lopez is 49 years old.
Wow. How old is he?
He is 43.
43. Wow. Okay.
43.
So not too far off.
Yes. No. Absolutely not. Otherwise, that's all I got right now for the non-football.
Good for them. I'm a huge A-Rod fan. When he was playing baseball, I mean, going back to that he was one of the first players to sign that massive 10-year, $300 million contract with the New York Yankees. And, I mean, nowadays it's a lot more common. But back then, just imagine not only that type of contract, but then to sign that contract in New York, I mean, how much pressure is that? He kept his calm. He dealt with all kinds of stuff, alongside with, you know, Derek Jeter, all these other stars, and I've always had a lot of respect for him. And ever since he retired from baseball, just seeing him in interviews and doing all these business moves. I just build more and more respect for him.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. Baseball is not an easy sport. You're away from your family for 8-9 months away from the season, and it takes a toll on you. You travel so much, from city to city. I'm not saying that this isn't just like any other sport, but deep down at the end of the day, you're right. He took a little harsh criticism, in sports. And now that he's retired, he should go on and live his life, and whatever makes him happy is great for him. Congratulations to him and J-Lo.
Absolutely. And that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. This is episode 2 of Grip the Laces podcast. If you enjoyed, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review, and we will catch you next time. Peace.